Assalamu alaikum. It's Josh from I Love Hip Hop in Morocco, sending peace and love to everybody watching this all around the world.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm an American filmmaker and a former expat and student in Morocco, and I have made films and I have made some television in my career, but it all began في المغرب in 2005 when I was there on a Fulbright grant to go and study the hip hop movement that had already begun and was really ready to explode, and to document that process and participate in that process by producing the hip hop festival that came to be known as I Love Hip Hop in Morocco, and sharing an incredible experience with some incredible artists, DJ Key, Ashkane, Fanayer, MC Big, Khazar, and a number of other artists and guest appearances from some US artists. And it was an incredible concert series, and it made a wonderful documentary film also called I Love Hip Hop in Morocco. And it began my career as a filmmaker in many ways. And for that, I'm forever grateful. Shukran al-Maghrib. The hip hop movement, as we know it, began in the Boogie Down Bronx in New York City and grew from there, first to the other boroughs in Harlem, Brooklyn, then to the rest of the world. And certainly the roots of hip hop and the rhythms of hip hop originally come from Africa and from Morocco. And so for hip hop to travel around the world and take on the different meanings and the different flavors and the different sounds of the places that it takes root is a beautiful thing to watch. And that is exactly what happened in Morocco, between the influences of French hip hop coming down in vinyl and CDs, break dancers beginning to take a piece of cardboard and spin on their heads and learn the moves, to DJs like the pioneer, the great DJ Key, managing to find the records and the turntables and cobbling them together and to learn how to scratch and teach himself how to scratch and mix and play parties, to the rap groups coming out of neighborhoods, poets. We know that Islam has a great love and tradition of poetry, so it's very natural that young people in Morocco took to coming up with songs. And there's a tradition of even poetry as protest in the music of the Gnawa movement and Nassakhiwan and artists like that from our parents' generation. And so it is very beautiful that hip hop kind of came back to Morocco and developed in this new way with these pioneering groups, Ashkane, Fanayer, MC Big, and that I was fortunate to be there at a time when these groups were really very well known in their communities and even in other cities, but had not yet had that moment to stand up on a stage as a movement, as a generation, and travel around the country to say, hip hop is here and we love it and we love what it says and we love the way we make it ourselves. And I think that's really what is the greatest achievement of hip hop in Morocco, is making Moroccan hip hop, not just an imitation of what they do in the Bronx or they do in Brooklyn, or what they do in France or what they do in Japan or anywhere else. Moroccan hip hop is 100% Maghrebi.
Oh yeah.
Remembering
In 2004, 2005, I got a research grant to come to Morocco to study the influence of American hip hop and of Eminem and Dr. Dre and big artists like that in Morocco. But what I wound up discovering and really changed, the course of my project and my life in many ways, was that there was not just an influence of American hip hop, but an influence of French hip hop. And as I was saying before, this huge influence of Moroccan music and Moroccan culture, from the Gnawi culture to the political culture to the sort of even rock and heavy metal world that was growing at that time. And Morocco, as we know, is this crossroads. So it became a project now about, you know, what is Moroccan hip hop, who is making Moroccan hip hop, and where is Moroccan hip hop going? And that is really what was the intention of the project. And I had the good fortune to meet the great DJ Key. And DJ Key, maybe more than anyone else at that time, was the centerpiece of the Moroccan hip hop community. And he knew all the groups, Fanayer and Ashkane and MC Big, and he was gracious and a good friend to connect me and my project to all of those different artists, so that we could all become a team and collaborators to bring this greater mission to life, which was then the idea of mounting a concert and a festival, and having the best groups and younger groups and breakdancers and graffiti artists all together to celebrate hip hop in Morocco. And it was really an idea that DJ Key and I and the different groups that we were involved with had together. And I was able to go and get the funding and the resources from various organizations, including the American Embassy, including the Coca-Cola Company, including the local Moroccan cultural institutions, to really build this incredible coalition of good forces, of positive forces that believed in the power of hip hop and believed in the power of hip hop in Morocco. And I think that is what the story of the film is bringing together those groups and those different individuals to tell this important and incredible story. It cannot be overstated the power of hip hop in many different communities organized by, you know, by a city, communities organized by a love of music, communities organized by, you know, a group that feels marginalized or oppressed by, let's say, you know, mainstream society. Hip hop is the voice of the underdog, and for every community that feels like they have something to say, a truth to speak, hip hop is an incredible and multidisciplinary community that you can join and bring your voice and bring your skills and learn other skills. So, and I think, you know, what's beautiful about hip hop in Morocco is that it embraces all of these different modalities. So, you know, breakdancing was really the first thing that I think took hold and became this popular thing that young guys were doing and young women were doing. And then Moroccans become world champions. DJing, you know, you need records, you need equipment. And, you know, Moroccans figured it out, and without having access to a lot of equipment or even records, managed to become some of the best DJs in the world and go on to win world championships. And then, you know, to be an MC, you don't even need a microphone. So finding the voice, finding the language between Darija and French and Spanish and German and English, you know, finding the stories that young artists in Morocco wanted to tell about the issues that are affecting them in the present and throughout history, you know, corruption and oppression and cultural narrowness, and you know, in many more topics, sexism and religious conservatism, the things that you could not say in polite conversation or at the dinner table, you can and should be saying in hip hop. And that is really the power of it, to speak truth to the forces that would you know, cover that truth up or stifle that truth. And when you put it to a dope ass beat, you know, people are going to listen no matter what.
Check this out.
You know, I learned an expression years ago. They say, "Kul wahid andu doq dielu," and I would say that applies to hip hop. Some people like hip hop with a real like raw rockin' beat, and some people like a more traditional taqlidi kind of sound. So from a group like Ashkane that just put out banger after banger, or MC Big that would draw on even American soul samples in their music. You've got a group like Fanayer that really crafted a very traditional, very Marrakchi kind of sound. So I think with Moroccan hip hop, I'm a Brooklyn guy, so I tend to prefer the hip hop that sounds like Brooklyn, and obviously the Notorious B.I.G. is the king of all time. But for hip hop, it's about your truth and your way of expressing it. So I don't think there can be a definition that applies to everything. I think it's, if it's true and it's what you feel and the music is dope, then it's going to find other people who can rock with that. Well, in American hip hop slang, what's an expression that I think is really like cool or innovative? People have said for many years now, this is not something that's new, but it still is fairly current. And I think it originated actually in Harlem. When you meet somebody or you're talking to somebody, you can say, "What's good?" Like, "What's up? How you doing? What's good?" And I like that expression because it leads with a positive, right? Not just what's up, but what's good. What are the good things, that are going on for you at this moment? But I don't think that's necessarily like a hip hop expression. It's certainly not like a specific lyric, but it's just an expression that I think is associated with hip hop, and so I guess we could claim it. And in Moroccan Arabic, I always liked, God, there's so many, and it'll probably more will come to me later in the day, but I just like an expression. I like an expression that isn't very hip hop actually in Morocco, that I think is very unique to Morocco, and it's when Moroccans say "Ma dimta fil Maghrib fil la tastaghrib." As the Notorious One sits over my right shoulder, the song "Juicy" and the opening lyric to me represents, really the purest and sort of most powerful kind of hip hop lyric, which is the personal story, the biography. It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine, Salt-N-Pepa, Heavy D up in the limousine, hanging pictures on my wall. Every Saturday, Rap Attacks, Magic Marley Marl. And Biggie continues to tell the story of being a young man, a young hustler, trying to make his way in the world, and finding the challenges of being a young black man in America in the 90s and in the 80s, everywhere he turns, and looking to hip hop to find his way out. I mean, that's really what Juicy is about, and going from negative to positive, and it's all good. So at the end of this story, we've gone from the dream, to an achievement, which is really what his life was, even in the short period of time. So I really love Juicy, as a real firsthand account of how hip hop can change one life. And that obviously has inspired so many more. But don't ask me for a Moroccan hip hop lyric on the spot, because I'd have to really dig into my brain, and I'm only one cup in so far. My favorite Moroccan rap song, there are so many, and I know I'm gonna get some angry email or a message for this, but I'm gonna have to go with MC Big, Schizo, off his classic album Mararbat Al Mout. MC Big, I love you, Big. That was a banger. That's got that Nina Simone sample, and just you know, verse after verse. I still listen to that song like when I'm trying to get in. Keep on loving hip hop in Morocco and hip hop all over the world, because it loves you and it's helping to keep us all free. And as the Notorious once said, it's all good. So keep banging and keep listening. And thank you for supporting this film and for supporting the hip hop movement around the world. Shukran.
Wait a minute. Don't touch that dial.